Have you ever wondered why some people seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to maintain discipline, while others struggle with the simplest daily habits? The ancient Japanese warrior Minamoto no Yoshitsune discovered a mental technique so powerful that it literally rewires your brain's reward system, creating an addiction to discipline itself, rather than to instant gratification. This isn't about willpower or motivation. This is about hacking the very neural pathways that control your desires and transforming your relationship with effort forever. What Yoshitsune understood 8 centuries ago, modern neuroscience is only now beginning to validate, and the implications for your life are nothing short of revolutionary. Before we dive deep into this forbidden technique, I need you to do something right now that will help thousands of others who are struggling just like you were before finding this video. Hit that like button. If you've ever felt frustrated by your own lack of consistency, subscribe to this channel because we're building a community of people committed to real transformation. And tell me in the comments which area of your life needs the most disciplinary strength right now. Just type, "My biggest discipline challenge is," and complete that sentence honestly, because your vulnerability might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to know they're not alone in this struggle. The story begins in the mountains of Japan during the late Heian period, where a young warrior named Yoshitsune was facing what seemed like an impossible task. Exiled from his family and hunted by enemies who wanted him dead, he had to master not just the art of warfare, but something far more challenging: the complete mastery of his own mind. While hiding in the temple of Heian-era, Yoshitsune discovered that his greatest enemy wasn't the sword of his brother or the political machinations of the court, but rather the constant internal rebellion of his own desires against what he knew he needed to do. Day after day, he watched himself sabotage his training, delay his practice, and choose comfort over growth, until he realized that conventional approaches to discipline were fundamentally flawed because they treated symptoms rather than the root cause of human inconsistency. During those cold mountain nights, when the wind howled through the ancient trees and his body screamed for warmth and rest, Yoshitsune began to understand that the battle for discipline was won or lost in the split second before action, in that crucial moment when the mind chooses between what feels good now and what serves the larger purpose. What Yoshitsune discovered through months of intense self-observation was that the human brain doesn't actually resist discipline itself. It resists the narrative we tell ourselves about discipline. Most people approach discipline as a form of self-punishment, a denial of pleasure, a constant battle against their natural inclinations, and this narrative literally programs the brain to associate effort with suffering. But Yoshitsune found a way to reverse this programming entirely, by changing not what he did, but how his mind interpreted what he was doing. He developed what he called the inverse pleasure principle, a mental technique that transforms the neurochemical experience of effort from painful to pleasurable, by redirecting the brain's dopamine response toward the process of discipline rather than its outcomes. The breakthrough came during a particularly brutal training session when, instead of gritting his teeth and enduring the discomfort, he began to smile at the moment of choosing to continue, despite every fiber of his being wanting to quit. That smile wasn't forced optimism or mental trickery. It was genuine appreciation for his own capacity to choose growth over comfort. And in that moment, everything changed. Here's how the technique works in practice. And pay close attention because this is where everything changes. Instead of focusing on the goal you want to achieve through discipline, you train your mind to find genuine pleasure in the moment of choosing discipline itself. When Yoshitsune faced the decision between staying warm in his shelter or practicing sword forms in the freezing cold, instead of thinking about becoming a better warrior or defeating his enemies, he taught himself to experience a rush of satisfaction from the exact moment he chose discomfort. He would literally pause, smile, and allow himself to feel proud of his brain for making the difficult choice, treating each disciplined decision like a small victory worthy of celebration. This isn't positive thinking or self-deception. This is strategic neurochemical manipulation based on understanding that the brain craves dopamine hits and will seek them wherever they're most readily available. The key insight that revolutionized his entire approach was recognizing that the brain doesn't distinguish between types of pleasure. It simply seeks whatever provides the strongest dopamine response. And through conscious practice, you can train it to find maximum pleasure in choices that serve your long-term well-being. The brilliance of this approach becomes clear when you understand what's happening in your brain chemistry. Every time you choose discipline and immediately reward yourself with genuine appreciation for making that choice, you're literally training your dopamine system to associate discipline with pleasure. Your brain begins to anticipate the satisfaction that comes from choosing the harder path, and gradually starts craving disciplined decisions the same way it once craved instant gratification mountain. Yoshitsune discovered that within just a few weeks of consistently applying this technique, he began looking forward to moments of potential self-sabotage because they represented opportunities to experience the pleasure of choosing correctly. The cold morning practices became something he genuinely enjoyed, not because they were comfortable, but because each moment of choosing to continue despite discomfort triggered a neurochemical reward that felt better than staying in bed. What's fascinating is that this transformation happens automatically once you understand the mechanism, because the brain is constantly seeking the path of greatest reward, and when discipline becomes more rewarding than instant gratification, your behavior changes naturally without force or struggle. Now I need you to pause for a moment and really consider what this means for your life right now. How many times have you started a discipline routine only to abandon it within days or weeks because it felt like constant self-torture? How many goals have you given up on because the daily actions required felt like swimming against a powerful current of your own resistance? What Yoshitsune's technique offers is a complete reframe that transforms discipline from something you have to force yourself to do into something you actually want to do, because your brain has learned to associate it with genuine pleasure and satisfaction. This isn't about becoming a masochist who enjoys suffering. This is about rewiring your reward system so that the highest pleasure comes from doing what serves your long-term well-being rather than what feels good in the immediate moment. Think about the person you could become if every healthy choice, every productive action, every moment of showing up despite not feeling like it became a source of genuine joy rather than an exercise in self-denial. The practical application of Yoshitsune's inverse pleasure principle requires a specific protocol that you can begin implementing today. First, identify one area of your life where you consistently struggle with discipline, whether that's exercise, diet, work habits, or any other domain where you know what you should do but find yourself repeatedly choosing the easier option. Next, for the next 7 days, every single time you face a choice between the disciplined option and the easy option, regardless of which choice you make, take a moment to consciously acknowledge that you're standing at a crossroads of self-creation. If you choose the disciplined option, immediately give yourself internal praise for making that choice, literally saying something like, "Excellent choice. I'm proud of my brain for choosing growth over comfort." If you choose the easy option, don't punish yourself, but do take a moment to notice how that choice feels in your body and mind, observing without judgment the difference between the temporary satisfaction of ease and the deeper satisfaction that comes from aligned action. The crucial element here is consistency in this practice, because you're literally creating new neural pathways. And like any construction project, the foundation must be laid one decision at a time, with unwavering commitment to the process. The key insight that Yoshitsune discovered is that most people fail at discipline because they're fighting their own reward system instead of working with it. Your brain is designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain, and no amount of willpower can permanently override this fundamental programming. But you can redirect it by making discipline itself pleasurable through conscious appreciation and celebration. After just 1 week of consistently acknowledging and celebrating disciplined choices, you'll notice that your brain begins to anticipate these moments of self-approval, and what once felt like forcing yourself to do something difficult begins to feel like giving yourself the gift of aligned action. This shift is subtle at first, but becomes more pronounced with each passing day, as your neural pathways literally rewire themselves to prefer the satisfaction of discipline over the temporary pleasure of instant gratification. The transformation often surprises people because it feels less like developing willpower and more like discovering a natural inclination toward excellence that was always present, but previously overshadowed by conditioned patterns of seeking immediate relief from discomfort. What makes Yoshitsune's approach particularly powerful is how it addresses the deeper psychological patterns that undermine most attempts at building discipline. Many people unconsciously associate discipline with deprivation, self-criticism, and harsh internal dialogue that makes every disciplined action feel like evidence that they can't trust their natural impulses. This creates a fundamental split between who they are and what they think they need to do to improve their lives, leading to an exhausting internal war that almost always ends in surrender to old patterns. Yoshitsune's technique dissolves this internal conflict by teaching the brain to experience discipline as self-care rather than self-denial, as an expression of self-love rather than self-control, and as a way of honoring your future self rather than punishing your present self. When this shift occurs, discipline stops feeling like something imposed from outside and starts feeling like a natural expression of your highest values and deepest desires for your own life. In your personal life, this transformation manifests as a fundamental shift in how you relate to challenge and discomfort. Instead of viewing difficult tasks as obstacles to endure until you can return to pleasure, you begin to see them as opportunities to strengthen your relationship with your own willpower. and to experience the unique satisfaction that comes from choosing growth over stagnation. Whether you're trying to establish a morning routine, maintain a healthy diet, or develop a creative practice, the inverse pleasure principle allows you to tap into an entirely different motivational system based on intrinsic satisfaction rather than external outcomes or fear-based compliance. Your morning workout becomes enjoyable, not because the physical sensations are pleasant, but because each moment of showing up despite not feeling like it triggers a neurochemical reward that feels better than sleeping in. Your healthy meal choices become satisfying, not just because they nourish your body, but because each choice reinforces your identity as someone who makes excellent decisions for their own well-being. In your relationships and social interactions, this approach creates a profound shift in how you handle interpersonal challenges and communication difficulties. Instead of avoiding difficult conversations or defaulting to people-pleasing behaviors to maintain comfort, you begin to experience genuine satisfaction from choosing authentic expression and honest communication, even when it feels uncomfortable. Yoshitsune understood that true strength in relationships comes not from avoiding conflict, but from consistently choosing truth and integrity over ease and approval seeking. When you've trained your brain to find pleasure in disciplined choices, having a difficult but necessary conversation with a family member or colleague becomes something you can approach with curiosity and even anticipation rather than dread and avoidance. The discipline required to speak your truth, set healthy boundaries, or address problems directly becomes a source of personal satisfaction rather than an energy drain. Professionally, the implications are enormous, because most career advancement requires sustained effort in areas that don't provide immediate gratification. Whether you're building a business, developing expertise in a field, or working toward a promotion, success depends on your ability to consistently choose actions that serve long-term goals over short-term comfort. When you've rewired your brain to find genuine pleasure in disciplined decision-making, tasks like prospecting for new clients, studying after work, or practicing presentations become intrinsically motivating rather than things you have to force yourself through. You begin to look forward to challenging projects not because they're easy, but because they represent opportunities to experience the satisfaction of choosing excellence over mediocrity. The daily grind of skill development, relationship building, and strategic planning transforms from something you endure to something you genuinely enjoy because your brain has learned to find its highest reward in choices that serve your professional growth. The historical context of Yoshitsune's discovery makes it even more remarkable when you consider the pressures and limitations he faced during one of Japan's most turbulent periods. Living as an exile with a price on his head, he had to develop unshakable mental discipline not as a luxury for self-improvement, but as a matter of survival. The techniques he developed weren't theoretical philosophy, but practical tools forged in the crucible of life and death stakes, where a moment of mental weakness could mean capture or death. This gives his approach a credibility and power that purely academic theories lack because every element was tested under extreme conditions and proven effective when failure wasn't an option. The fact that these principles enabled him to not only survive but eventually become one of history's most celebrated warriors speaks to their fundamental effectiveness in creating sustainable behavioral change under even the most challenging circumstances. Modern neuroscience validates Yoshitsune's intuitive understanding of how the brain's reward systems function and can be retrained. Research on neuroplasticity shows that the neural pathways associated with pleasure and motivation are far more flexible than previously believed and can be significantly altered through consistent practice and conscious attention. Studies on habit formation reveal that the brain's dopamine response can be shifted from the outcome of an action to the action itself, which is exactly what Yoshitsune's inverse pleasure principle accomplishes through conscious celebration of disciplined choices. The fact that his insights align so perfectly with current scientific understanding while being developed centuries before these mechanisms were understood speaks to both the universality of these principles and the depth of his self-awareness. Contemporary research on behavioral change consistently shows that the most effective interventions work with, rather than against, the brain's natural reward-seeking mechanisms, validating Yoshitsune's fundamental insight that lasting discipline must be built on pleasure rather than punishment. What truly sets Yoshitsune's approach apart from modern self-help methodologies is its recognition that lasting discipline must be built on pleasure rather than punishment. Most contemporary approaches to habit change rely on systems of external accountability, fear of consequences, or sheer willpower, all of which create unsustainable pressure that eventually leads to rebellion and abandonment of the desired behaviors. Yoshitsune understood that the only sustainable foundation for discipline is internal satisfaction and genuine enjoyment of the process itself. When you truly enjoy making disciplined choices because your brain has learned to associate them with immediate pleasure, you no longer need external motivation or fear-based compliance because the behavior has become intrinsically rewarding. This internal shift creates a form of discipline that feels effortless and natural rather than forced and temporary, leading to lasting change that persists even when external circumstances become challenging. The depth of this transformation becomes apparent when you realize that you're not just changing your actions, but fundamentally altering your identity and self-concept. As you consistently choose discipline and experience genuine satisfaction from these choices, you begin to see yourself as someone who naturally makes good decisions rather than someone who has to fight against their own nature. This shift in self-perception creates a positive feedback loop where disciplined actions feel more natural and automatic because they align with who you believe yourself to be. You stop experiencing discipline as something you do and start experiencing it as an expression of who you are, which makes consistency effortless rather than exhausting. The internal narrative changes from, "I have to force myself to exercise," to, "I am someone who takes excellent care of their body." And this identity-level shift creates behavioral consistency that doesn't require constant decision-making or willpower depletion. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Yoshitsune's discovery is how it reveals discipline not as a limitation of freedom, but as the ultimate expression of freedom. When you're addicted to instant gratification and controlled by impulses, you're actually living in a form of slavery to whatever stimulus happens to be strongest in any given moment. True freedom comes from the ability to choose your responses based on your values and long-term vision, rather than being reactive to immediate circumstances. By making discipline itself pleasurable, you gain the freedom to consistently choose actions that serve your highest good, rather than being at the mercy of fluctuating emotions and external pressures. This freedom extends beyond personal habits to every area of life where conscious choice can replace unconscious reaction, creating a life of intentional design rather than circumstantial drift. If this exploration of Yoshitsune's revolutionary approach has opened your eyes to new possibilities for your own relationship with discipline and personal growth, I need you to take action right now while this inspiration is fresh in your mind. Subscribe to this channel immediately and hit that notification bell, because we're building a community of people who refuse to settle for mediocrity and are committed to unlocking their true potential through ancient wisdom and proven principles. Your transformation begins the moment you decide to implement these teachings rather than just consuming them as entertainment. Share in the comments below exactly which area of your life you're going to apply the inverse pleasure principle to first, and describe the specific discipline choice you're going to celebrate tomorrow morning. Your public commitment will not only increase your own likelihood of follow-through, but will inspire others who are ready to break free from their patterns of inconsistency and step into the disciplined, purposeful life they've always known they were capable of creating.